This is the first test of my homemade PWM speed controller. I'm going to be controlling the speed of this permanent magnet brushed DC motor. And I'm going to work my way up from 12 volts to 84 volts if I can. So I got my safety switch here. Alright, 12 volts starting out. I've got the frequency set to about 25,000 hertz. And I'm going to adjust the duty cycle now. All the way up to 100. Okay, that's 12 volts. Here's 24. $36. 48 volts. 'This is how I set up the circuit. I'm using pulse width modulation to control the speed of the motor. And I'm doing that by using a MOSFET, right here, to connect and disconnect the battery bank from the motor thousands of times a second. And to properly control the MOSFET, I programmed a PIC microcontroller, right there, to use two potentiometers as inputs, right here. One potentiometer controls the duty cycle of the PWM signal, and the other potentiometer controls the frequency of the PWM signal. Here it is on the oscilloscope. One potentiometer controls the frequency of the PWM signal. That's how many times the MOSFET switches on and off per second. And the other potentiometer controls the duty cycle of the PWM signal, which is how many percent of the time the MOSFET is turned on. If the MOSFET is turned on a low percentage of the time, the motor will turn slow. And if the MOSFET is turned on a high percentage of the time, the motor will turn fast. Well, I only made it up to 48 volts on the speed controller before I shorted something out. I'll have to order some more parts and do some more testing. But I wanted to show you guys how I program the microcontroller. I'm using a PIC microcontroller, and I got a PICkit 3 programmer that came with an adapter, and that just plugs into the USB on the computer. And then you just put the microcontroller in the right spot on the programmer and lock it in. And then I downloaded MPLAB from Microchip. Microchip's the company that makes the PIC microcontrollers. But I also downloaded Microchip Code Configurator, and that's really cool because it fills out most of the code for you. You just fill out some of the basic information, and it'll turn it into code. Like I'm using the PWM, so you click on that, and then it asks you for the information. You just type it right out. I wanted to use the duty cycle and the period, which controls the frequency. And then it turns it all into code for you. And then the little bit of C code that you have to do yourself in the C programming language, you just use these H files, and that gives you a description of some functions you can use. It just tells you how to use it, and then it tells you what to type in. So this is how you set the duty cycle right there. And then you go to your main C file, and you type in your code. And all I did was make the code that uses the analog to digital converter to set the period count, which is the frequency control. And then I also used the analog to digital converter to read the potentiometer to set the PWM duty cycle and everything. So that's it. I just did the frequency and duty cycle. And then you go up here, click Make and Program. And it makes the program for you. It's building. Okay, and then it'll programming right now. And then it'll say verify at the bottom. But up here, it also shows you the sample of what the microcontroller looks like, and it shows you which pins you're using for what. and you can change the pins down here in pin manager grid view, and you just select which pin you want, like the PWM or the analog to digital converter, or there's a whole bunch of other resources in here, and they'll show up here.